Have you ever wondered if Jesus actually existed? Sounds a strange question, and in fact, if you grabbed any history professor at any credentialed university anywhere in the world, they would look at you like you're mad, because it's taken as a given that of course he did. The evidence is so overwhelming. But you can find people lurking in the darker corners of the internet who have advanced the idea that Jesus never existed, and so I meet people who've read that or heard that and are therefore puzzled. So what can we say about the question of Jesus and history? Well, there are so many things I could say, and we've covered this elsewhere on the Solas website over the years. But let me come into the question in this video through the angle of archaeology. Now, not many people are necessarily aware that biblical archaeology is actually a very live discipline with conferences and academic articles and university courses and so on and so forth. Simply being because when you go and dig in the sands of the Middle East, often what comes out of those archaeological digs is evidence and information that corroborates or casts light on the Bible. Sure, you're not going to go dig a trench in ancient Israel, in what was ancient Israel, and prove the Bible, but you can corroborate the Bible. And corroboration is often what archaeology offers us. In fact, I was talking to a friend who is an archaeologist just the other day who shared with me an interesting piece of information I'd actually never heard before. He said to me, it's interesting. He said, in biblical archaeology right now, it's exciting times because we now know of the names of, we have 53 names of figures from the Old Testament who we now have corroborated through inscriptions, coins, other things that have come out of the sands of the Middle East. And he looked at me and he said, do you know, just incidentally, how many people here in Britain from before the Roman conquests in the 1st century, how many people do we know of in the same way through archaeology who we actually have their names? I went, I don't know, 15, 20? He went, 0. 0. We know of none. There is nothing like it. Whereas in the ancient world, we have huge amounts. Now, when it comes to the Gospels, we have even more. Things get very interesting the way that archaeology has helped, again, just corroborate the narratives. So take, for example, the third gospel writer, Luke. Luke wrote a gospel, and he also wrote the book of Acts, a sort of two-part book looking at the life of Jesus and and what happened with the early church. And there's a very famous example where in Acts 18:12, Luke uses the term proconsul to describe a man called Gallio. And until recently, there was no other occurrence of the word proconsul anywhere in Greek literature as a title for a civic ruler. And so skeptics began to say, well, Luke's got it wrong. He's made this term up, he's making the story up, or he's got it completely wrong. We can't trust him. Well, in 1905, a team of French archaeologists were digging in a town called Delphi in Greece, and lo and behold, a stone tablet emerged from the from the trench they were digging. And this tablet was in pieces, but as they assembled it together, they discovered something interesting. Not merely did this tablet, which dates to AD 51, not merely did it mention the same title, a proconsul, it used it for the same person, Gallio, was mentioned. Luke had the right title, the right person, the right place, the right date. And that inscription, which you can now go and see in a museum, is known as the Gallio inscription. Something similar happened with the fourth gospel, John's gospel, where in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 2, John talks about a healing that Jesus did at the pool of Bethesda, which he tells us was near the sheep gate in Jerusalem. And for a long time, this puzzled scholars because there had been lots of archaeological digs done in Jerusalem. That part of the city had been dug, no such pool had been discovered. And also, John added a particular detail that seemed really odd. He said this pool was surrounded by 5 covered colonnades, rows of arches and pillars. And that seemed a very strange way to build a pool. Why would you build a hexagonal pool? Well, again, early part of the 20th century, a new piece of archaeology was done and some new diggings were done in Jerusalem in that part of the city. And lo and behold, out of the rubble emerged the shape, the outline of this very mysterious, very strange pool. And it was a rectangle, 4 sides, with a 5th colonnade across the middle. In other words, 5 colonnades. Right pool, right features, right place, just as John had discovered. Now, don't get me wrong. The archaeology can't prove that everything the Bible tells us about Jesus is true, but it gives the Bible the ring of history. The Bible is not telling fairy stories about some time in the past separated from reality. The Bible grounds the stories of Jesus. The other stories of the Bible, they're grounded in times and places and names and dates that archaeology time and time again can corroborate or verify. But one last thought. Even if you ignored all of those tons of archaeology and threw it aside, I'm still doubting Jesus. If you throw Jesus away, the problem is you create a much bigger problem for yourself, because now you have a Jesus-shaped hole in history and you struggle to explain the early church. You know, some religions get going because becoming a member of that religion, like early Islam, gets you power and influence and military connections. But to be a Christian in the first generation was usually a fast track ticket to arrest, torture, execution, and so on. Why did the first Christians believe? Why did the church begin if those eyewitness accounts or purported eyewitness accounts in the Gospels aren't actually true? Because Christianity began within the lifetime of the eyewitnesses of Jesus. Much easier to face up to the fact the Gospels have the ring of history. They're corroborated by archaeology, and all I'm inviting you to do is read them. And as you read them, wonder to yourself, who do they describe? Who is Jesus sound like he is? What are the claims he's making? And do those claims in that story stand up?